James Overworks. As a reward for saving James while he was run away, Edward was sent to the works to have his worn parts mended, and the boys who had meddled with his controls were found by their fathers and forbidden from watching trains until they could trust it again. James was having a rest before taking his train, and until a relief driver came while his own driver was recovering in hospital. "That Edward," James said to himself. "I underestimated his speed. He was even fast enough to stop me while my driver has taken ill." James rested and rested until Sir Topham Hatt arrived. "James, are you ready to take your train now? This man will be your driver until your old one gets better." "Yes, I am, sir," said James delightfully, because the boys meddling with his controls had caused his tank to run low. James had to fill up on water. At last, James was ready to go back and fetch his train. But when James arrived, he saw Percy preparing it. "Thank you for arranging this train, Percy," said James. "You weren't here, so the yard manager told me to arrange it," added Percy. "Because some boys had meddled with my controls. But luckily, Edward came to my rescue," James said. "Thomas was right," said Percy. "Edward was able to beat you in the race." "Don't remind me," sighed James. Once Percy had finished arranging the train, James backed down and was coupled up. "Well, I must go now," James said, and he puffed away with the freight cars following behind. Come along," James puffed. "Oh, oh," groaned the cars. James had to stop at a signal. "This train is to go to the harbor," his fireman said. "Wait for the signal to drop, and we'll be on our way." As he said this, the signal did drop, and James puffed down the line. "Now this is rather an unfamiliar place," James said to himself. "Never been down here before." James passed the figurage orchard where Trevor was chuffering about. "Now who could that engine be?" Trevor pondered. James didn't hear Trevor as he forged ahead. "This must be it," he said as he steamed into the harbor. The harbor was full of all kinds of ships. There were ships that brought passengers, ships that brought cargo, and even fishing boats and barges. "Now that I've delivered this load," James said, "what's next?" "There are these cattle cars that need to be delivered to the big yard," said the harbor master. "Edward was supposed to deliver them, but you were run away, so he couldn't. Edward is at the works being mended after saving me," James explained. "So you can take them," the harbor master decided. "I guess they're better than nothing," James thought. After James was coupled up in front of the cattle cars, he puffed away. Let's go, James puffed excitedly. "Oh, oh," screamed the freight cars. They didn't like it when Edward pulled them so hard, so they were worried that James wouldn't be any better. James had heard about the time cows had broken through Edward's cattle train, and remembered the time he crashed into a field, so he puffed very carefully along the line. Surprisingly, as James puffed past the cow field, the cows weren't disturbed. James had puffed by so quietly that they didn't hear him. "That's more like it," James said to himself. Soon, James had delivered the cattle cars to the yard for the next time cows were to be collected. "I've done it," sighed James. "Good," said the yard manager. "Now I want you to do all these jobs until Edward returns." James was worried, but for the rest of the week, James did all his jobs without fuss. But one day, James overshot the junction to the harbor branch line. By mistake, he was sent along the main line. "Oh no!" James cried. "I'm on the wrong track!" James's fireman was cross, so he backed James up. When the switches had changed, James puffed down the branch line. Later, James puffed into Thomas's junction later than ever. "I'm sorry, Thomas," he panted. "The signalman accidentally sent me along the main line and delayed me." "It's lucky for you that you're only doing freight," sighed Thomas. "Passengers are more important than freight." And he puffed away before James could reply. That evening, James puffed into the sheds at Edward Station, feeling more tired than ever. "Overworked yourself, have you, James?" asked Aurora. "Yes, ladies," puffed James. "Missing your driver, are you, James?" asked Ariel. "Yes," said James. "But even more—" James paused. "We miss Edward as well," said Anna. "He's an expert at shunting. Now we know how he must feel doing work." James knew he and the coaches had a lot in common. The next day, Edward did return, and he was welcomed with a chorus of cheers and whistles, but the loudest whistle came from James. "We're so glad to see you back, Edward," cheered James. "We missed you," Anna cheered as well. "And I missed you all too," smiled Edward. Suddenly, someone else came into James's sight. "Hello, James." James looked down, and August! James had missed his driver very much. That was two who had returned the very same day. All the engines gave a chorus of cheers and whistles. Sir Topham had things he'll be deaf for weeks.